time before the build-up to the TV debate steamrolled everything else off the agenda. But earlier this week, the main parties launched their manifestos. Remember Labour's Rising Sun, the Tories' hardback blue book inviting us to join the government, or the Lib Dems wanting to hardwire fairness into Britain? Yeah, we thought you might have forgotten. We haven't. And while the parties sell their sunny visions of the future, just how much did we really learn about the hard stuff? How will they cut that little thing known as the deficit? And do their figures add up? Who better to answer the questions than the BBC's business editor, Robert Peston? He took himself off for a break in the sunshine of West Wales. There is sun there, you know, to do a bit of number crunching in peace.
Taxman's taken all my dough and left me in my state.
It's lovely to get away from it all here in Aberystwyth, jewel of the West Wales coast. Apparently, there's a general election on, although people here don't seem terribly excited by it. If you turn to the local paper, the Cambrian News, it's page 10 before there's any mention of it, although the front page does talk about a subject that's on most of our minds: cuts. Now, I have brought my holiday reading, not Stieg Larsson, but the party manifestos. I like the look of this one, Labour's manifesto, because it takes me back to those Janet and John books I read as a child. And look, the sun's shining. Now, Labour rejects business as usual and says it will plot an optimistic course in uncertain times, and it promises to protect frontline spending on schools, hospitals and policing. And look at this elegant, expensively bound volume from the Tories. And look at that unbeatable offer. They want me to join the government. Hooray! Now, the Tories too say they'll protect areas of spending, health, overseas aid and defence. And they say they can make billions of pounds of cuts without affecting the quality of services. And then there's this cheap and cheerful paperback from the Liberal Democrats. They're going to make the country greener, create jobs, and best of all, put money in my pocket. And the Welsh Nationalists have produced this rather stylish magazine, and they think their dragon could roar in a hung parliament.
All I've got's this sunny afternoon.
Crikey, I'm spoilt for choice between the Tory ice cream, the Lib Dem ice cream and the Labour ice cream. And obviously, for reasons of BBC impartiality, I can't actually say which one I think is the most delicious. But hang on a second, I know holidays are supposed to be about escapism, but aren't we in the most fearful economic mess? Haven't we just emerged from the worst recession since the 1930s, following the worst banking crisis for 100 years? And isn't the most pressing problem for any new government a budget deficit that's the biggest it's ever been in peacetime?
Help me, help me, help me sail away. Well, give me 2 good reasons why I ought to stay.
And along with the positive gloss of the manifestos, the parties do talk about the requirement for cuts. They all have plans to reduce the deficit, with the Tories saying that they'd cut a little bit earlier and a little bit more than the others. But I can't find the important detail about which public services would actually be lost, how many jobs would go, what kind of business would be lost to those who supply the public sector. That kind of vital information, which we all need, simply isn't in these books. Some estimate that the missing detail on the necessary cuts is equivalent to 1/4 of everything we spend on the NHS. And there's another hugely important gap. None of the parties spell out how, in years to come, they would balance the books sufficiently so the national debt might actually start falling.
Blazing on a sunny afternoon.
A plan for how we're going to start repaying our debts doesn't just matter to all of us, it also matters to the big investors who provide the finance to the government for those important schools and hospitals. And if we were to lose the confidence of investors, well, we could then find ourselves a bit like Greece, dependent on help from other countries and the IMF, and we could find that really painful cuts are forced upon us. That said, with a coolish wind blowing across Cardigan Bay, not everything about Greece seems all that bad to me.
In the summertime.
Our man on the beach, Robert Peston. James Purnell, is he right to be so bleak about our economic situation?
We're not going to be Greece. I mean, Britain is a very successful economy, and there's no prospect of that at all. I think where he's right.
We're borrowing the same amount.
Yeah, but we can finance it much more credibly because people believe we'll pay it back, and our economy is much more successful. I mean, it's actually just an interesting point, which I think actually the bigger decisions are in the long term. Can we afford to spend more on defence on average, more on public services than average, more on aid than average? We are going to have to make some more on welfare. We're going to have to make some decisions as a country.